James Harden, a name that once echoed across every arena in the world with the force of a rising storm, carrying with it the promise of brilliance, creativity, and a style of basketball nobody had ever seen before. From the very beginning, he wasn't just a player. He was a phenomenon shaped by long nights in empty gyms, haunted by the pressure of proving himself again and again in a world that only remembered your last performance. He came from a place where people doubted him, questioned his potential, dismissed his style, but he held onto a fire deep inside, a stubborn belief that he could change the game, and for years he did. He dazzled crowds with step-backs so smooth they felt like sleight-of-hand magic, scoring bursts that seemed impossible, seasons where he carried entire franchises on his back, even as critics tore at his name and questioned his heart, his commitment, his legacy. What the world never saw were the nights his body begged him to stop, when the weight of expectation pressed on him like a shadow he could never outrun, when the cheers faded and the silence of a hotel room felt heavier than any defender he had ever faced. Throughout his 30s, the years of pressure, injuries, and constant scrutiny began to take their toll. The hamstring that never fully healed, the fatigue he hid behind a trademark smile, the endless cycle of being blamed whenever teams fell short, even when he had given everything he had, and then more. Behind the beard, behind the swagger, behind the MVP trophy, there was a man wrestling with doubt, regret, and the quiet ache of knowing that greatness always comes with a price people rarely understand. And then came 36, a year that forced him to confront himself in ways the game never had. His body slowed in ways he couldn't ignore. Moves that once felt effortless demanded everything he had left, and the game he had controlled for so long began slipping from his grip like sand through trembling fingers. But the deeper truth, the one he kept buried, was not just about physical decline. It was the emotional weight he could no longer carry alone. The years of sacrifice had built walls around him. Relationships strained, trust eroded. Moments he wished he could reclaim, lost forever to the grind of a career spent chasing a dream that often felt just out of reach. At 36, something changed inside him, something the public only sensed in glimpses. A quiet realization that the version of James Harden the world adored had come with a cost he could no longer ignore. He found himself looking back on everything, the triumphs, the controversies, the joy, the pain, and seeing not just the legend, but the human being who had fought so hard to stay strong for so long. And in those private moments, away from cameras and fans, he finally allowed himself to feel the magnitude of everything he had endured. His journey became a reminder that even the greatest can break, that even icons carry invisible wounds, and that behind every highlight is a story of sacrifice most people will never hear. What happened to James Harden at 36 was not just a decline, it was a revelation. A moment when the man behind the myth stepped into the light, vulnerable, honest, and profoundly human, leaving the world to realize that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought in silence, long after the cheers have faded. James Harden, after years of being the face of resilience, brilliance, and unmatched creativity on the court, found himself entering a chapter of life he never truly prepared for. A chapter where the roar of the crowd no longer drowned out the quiet questions he carried inside. He had built an entire identity around being unstoppable. The man who could score at will, who could shift momentum with a single move, who could turn doubters into believers with one breathtaking performance. But as time pushed forward, he began to feel a different kind of weight settling on his shoulders, one that came not from defenders or critics, but from the years he had spent pouring every ounce of himself into a game that demanded everything and offered little rest in return. He started to notice the small moments, the longer warm-ups, the slower recoveries, the mental exhaustion that lingered even when his body felt ready. The step-back jumper that once felt like second nature now required deeper focus, greater effort, and a quiet reminder to himself that he could still do it. And while the world watched him through the lens of highlights, debates, and constant judgment, he lived through a reality they could never fully grasp. He struggled with the loneliness of fame, the pressure of constantly being compared to a younger version of himself, the realization that the admiration of millions could never fully replace the personal connections he lost along the way. He reflected on friendships that drifted, relationships that couldn't survive the demands of the lifestyle, and moments with loved ones that he sacrificed for the next game, the next season, the next chance at proving who he was. The spotlight he once embraced began to feel like a weight, exposing every flaw, every doubt, every fear he had tried to hide behind confidence and skill. And yet, despite all of it, he kept pushing, because that was who he was: a fighter, a survivor, a man who learned how to keep moving forward even when the world misunderstood him. As he confronted this new emotional landscape, he began to understand something deeper about himself: that his journey was never just about basketball, but about becoming a man who could carry the truth of who he was without needing the court to define him. The boy who once dreamed of NBA stardom had grown into a man who had tasted its highest highs and endured its lowest lows, and now he was learning to look at his life with honesty, compassion, and a new kind of strength. One that wasn't measured in points or accolades, but in the courage to face himself fully, with nothing left to hide. James Harden carried himself with the same calm confidence the world had always seen. But inside, a quieter, heavier truth was forming. One shaped by years of sacrifice that few ever understood. He had spent so long being the player who always delivered, the man who could change the energy of an entire arena with a single crossover, that he never stopped to ask what all those expectations were taking from him. As time moved forward, he began feeling the echoes of every game, every playoff run, every night he pushed through pain that he never spoke about. The world saw the beard, the swagger, the highlights, but they never saw the moments when he sat alone after midnight, legs throbbing, mind racing, wondering how much longer he could carry the weight of being James Harden. He thought about the decisions he made, the teams he left, the ones he joined, the friends he couldn't keep, the teammates who didn't understand the pressure he lived with, the criticism that stuck with him even when he pretended it didn't matter. He remembered the moments he wanted to breathe, just breathe, without a camera in his face or a headline twisting his intentions. He remembered the people he lost along the way, the apologies he owed but never voiced, the forgiveness he wished he received but never asked for. And as the noise around his career grew louder, something inside him grew quieter. He started to question what truly mattered. Was it the records, the MVP, the scoring titles, the debates on sports shows, Or was it the simple peace he rarely felt? The peace of waking up without pressure suffocating his thoughts? The peace of knowing he didn't have to carry the expectations of millions? He realized that every time he stepped on the court, he wasn't just battling defenders, he was battling his own exhaustion, his own doubt, his own desire to feel human again. But even as the emotional weight pulled at him, he never stopped fighting. Because that's who he had always been. Not just a scorer, not just a superstar, but a man who kept pushing through storms no one else could see. And now, facing the stage of life where reflection became unavoidable, he began to understand that strength wasn't just about dominating the game. It was about confronting the truth he had buried beneath years of highlights and headlines. He began to see that his journey wasn't defined solely by what the world expected of him, but by the resilience he showed when no one was watching, the heart he carried even when it felt bruised, the dreams he still held on to despite everything he had endured. James Harden had always been the man who could control the game with a single move, the player the world expected to deliver every night. But behind the highlights and the fame, there was a deeper, quieter struggle that few ever saw. Years of relentless competition, injuries, criticism, and personal sacrifices had built a weight he carried silently. He remembered late nights alone, replaying decisions, thinking of friends lost along the way, and wondering if the joy of the game could ever outweigh the exhaustion and pressure. Every step on the court was not just a game, but a test of endurance, of heart, of resilience. Harden realized that strength wasn't just scoring or winning. It was confronting the hidden battles, the doubts, and the loneliness, and finding himself beneath the weight of everything the world demanded of him. James Harden had become more than an athlete. He was a symbol of talent and resilience, yet beneath the fame, a silent struggle persisted. Years of injuries, criticism, and sacrifices weighed heavily, and the loneliness of late nights and endless pressure shaped him. Every game tested not just skill, but heart and endurance, forcing Harden to confront doubts, hidden battles, and the cost of living up to expectations while searching for the man he truly was beneath it all. Subscribe now to follow James Harden's journey and uncover untold truths.